What's up, everybody? You are listening to the Think Big podcast. I'm your host, Ayelet Polonsky. This podcast is designed to help you create a manifestation mindset by learning how to think big, to question your old way of thinking and recreate the neural pathways necessary to live a life wilder than you've ever thought possible. We're here to have raw, vulnerable, and courageous conversations with big personalities to get behind the scenes and find out what their secrets to manifesting are. I am humbled to have this opportunity to guide you towards a more meaningful life. If you enjoy this episode, please share the love, share it with a friend or family member, and don't forget to subscribe for weekly updates. Let's get into today's episode. And as always, happy manifesting.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm good. Okay, everyone who's watching should know that Sabrina and I go way back to should I say a decade and a half ago to my NYU days.
Yes, that's so wild. I remember meeting you at a coffee shop before you even started doing this and talking about things that you wanted to do. And look at us now.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I feel like if we can spend forever probably just reconnecting and reestablishing that relationship. So we're going to do that. We'll do that off the record. Because let me tell you, I posted I opened it to people's questions and I think I got a bajillion questions that came in on the topic. Clearly you have your hands on a really hot topic. But before we go into just our schmooze about dating and relationships and the do's and the don'ts, I mean, it's been a decade and a half. I'm curious, can you enlighten me why this topic? Why are you passionate about it?
I think it's because of the experiences I had in my own life of feeling so confused and so disempowered in my relationships. I would go through my regular life feeling like a confident girl. I like my friends, I like my life. But then when it came to relationships, I always felt like I was at the mercy of men. I was always acting too needy or not getting the relationship I wanted, not getting the kinds of guys that I wanted. And then I was just so confused. And I'm very fascinated in human behavior. I double majored in English and psychology in college. And I was people would always ask me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I was like, I want to write about people. I don't know if that's a job, because at the time, I'm old. I graduated a long time ago. So there wasn't blogs, there wasn't this coaching industry. I'm I just want to write about people and understand why people act the way they do. And that's what started it. And then when I graduated, that's when blogs were, around 2009, that's when blogs were really becoming a thing. So I started a blog and I was I want to understand why men act the way they do. And that's basically where it started.
Wow. Well, so you turned writing about people into an actual industry is what it sounds like.
I did.
I mean, I feel like I was in a similar boat. And I kept just for years before Thank God Manifesting my husband, I realized that I was attracting a different archetype of the same, different guy, same archetype.
Same. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What's that about? Why do we get stuck in this trap of we think that by ending one relationship we'll manifest or attract the right one, but we end up with the same whatever narcissist, whatever it is.
Yeah. So there's a great book on this. It's by Harville Hendricks, and he has this theory. It's called imago theory. And basically, our unconscious, we don't have access to that. So anytime you meet someone, our subconscious is scanning everything about them, the way they talk, their tone of voice, the way they use their hands, their gestures. And if someone, he posits that we tend to go for people that remind us of the relationship we had with our most difficult parent. So if your dad never made you feel good enough, you're going to go after guys who don't make you feel good enough. And this is your subconscious mind way of rectifying that old wound. If I can get this guy to see me as good enough, then I'll be okay. But that's not how it goes, unfortunately, because instead you keep perpetuating the same cycle and reliving the same thing. And then people are like, well, this is what I'm drawn to. The heart wants what it wants. But your heart is not always steering you in the right direction. You have to recognize, like for a while, my heart was steering me to guys who were completely emotionally unavailable. And I was like Groundhog's Day, the same thing over and over again until I recognized what that void was, what it was that I was seeking. Mm-hmm. And I was looking for it in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then, if it comes down to like childhood wounds, does that mean, does it mean that it requires years of therapy before a person can be ready to get married, to commit?
No, not always. Every person has their own individual circumstances and their own levels of trauma. And it's not always a childhood trauma. Sometimes it could be your high school boyfriend was a certain way and treated you a certain way, and that left an impression on you. But it could also be as simple as I was the unattractive girl in middle school, high school, and when girls are that young and at that age, we tend to think, okay, if I could get the hot guy to want me, the popular guy, then I'm worthy, then I'm lovable. So she might find she's always attracted to the douchey, hot guy type. And then sometimes all it takes is recognizing oh, it's because I still feel like that ugly duckling girl. And so I'm going for these kinds of guys. So it doesn't necessarily mean she needs to spend years and years in therapy. You just recognize no, that's not who I am anymore. That's who I was. I've gone past that. I don't need to be validated in this way by getting this type of guy to want me. Other people have been through real trauma, and I see that a lot with my coaching clients. I'm not a therapist, and I never pretend to be. So for them, sometimes I recommend, you need to find somebody who specializes in trauma or narcissistic abuse, because that's not always something you can untangle by yourself.
Right. Totally. I agree. 100%. How would a person, I get a lot of my clients or students coming to me and they're like, how do I know when I'm ready to actually be in a committed relationship? I feel like I have so much baggage. I bring so much to the relationship. There's just so much trauma bond. How do I know when I'm ready to get into a committed relationship?
So here's something I've realized recently about life in general, and this answers the question, is that you're never ready for anything. You're never ready to have a baby. Just do it.
Right.
Right. You could be obvious certain things all right, I want to make sure I can pay for the baby, but you're never really ready. No one's ever really ready for anything. All you can really do is be in a place where you have a growth mindset, where you are working on yourself. You cannot be an I am what I am, take me or leave me type of person. To an extent, yeah, your partner will love and accept you for who you are, but we should always be growing. You don't want to just be hey, this is who I am, and sometimes I'm mean and I'm impatient, I'm stubborn. I personally am very impatient, and that's something that I'm growing and I'm working on that every day. So yes, we all have baggage. There's not a single person on the whole planet Earth that does not have any baggage. But what are you doing to work on that? What are you doing so that you're not bringing so much of the baggage into the relationship? And it's also the most important thing of all is to have the awareness that a relationship's not going to cure you. It's not, if you don't have self-esteem, a relationship's not going to give you self-esteem. It doesn't matter how kind he is to you. You will be an empty vessel. It'll just go right through you. Mm-hmm. So as long as you're not in a place where you are expecting a partner to fix you and cure you and manage all your baggage, then you're fine. There is no such thing as being 100% whole and healed. I've been, I think people look at me sometimes okay, you're the finished product. You are the actualized. And it's no, I have so much that I'm still working on every day. I've overcome a lot of these issues, but then once you get married, all new issues come up. And then once you have a baby, all new issues come up. So it's a lifelong process. So as long as you're committed to doing the work, then you're okay. You're in a good place.
And it could work. Yeah. But then what about red flags, right? Because it's a person can get into a relationship and tell themselves, well, I'm just doing the work. And I know that it's a lifelong journey and that the work never ends. So maybe I'm just meant to be in this relationship that is toxic. How does a person know what to look for when in a relationship?
Do you mean toxic relationship red flags to watch out for?
Yeah.
Okay. The first is what I mentioned about being an I am the way I am person, take it or leave it. That is a toxic trait. If you're a woman, should never be, when I say do the work, I mean work on yourself. I don't mean do all the work in a relationship and the relationship's not working and you take all the responsibility for that, which unfortunately a lot of women do end up doing. Us as the feminine energy is the energy of manifestation, and we see the raw potential, we see the good guy he could be underneath all the baggage, and we try to actualize that potential. And actualizing potential has its place and it's a beautiful thing. But in this regard, if a guy is not, the number one quality, first of all, to look for in a man is he committed to making it work? Because relationships are always going to be hard. You can marry your soulmate. I'm fairly positive that I married mine, and it's still hard and it still takes work.
100%.
Is he do? Does he want to do the work with you? If you're working all by yourself, that's toxic. That's a bad relationship. The next is if you are constantly taking responsibility for his emotions and his reactions. Like, for example, he gets angry all the time. He has a temper. And you think, well, if I was a better girlfriend or a better wife, then he wouldn't do that. And it's because I set him off and I did this. So if you're constantly thinking that you're responsible, no, he's a grown man. If he has a temper problem, he needs to work on that. If you think that everything is your fault, that's a big sign of like a toxic relationship. Another one is like everybody's favorite word these days, gaslighting. He makes you feel crazy for your perception of reality. You see a situation one way and he will spin a word salad and make you completely doubt like what you're seeing and feeling is real. So that's another big one. And that ties into someone who can't accept responsibility for anything. In a relationship, there is never one person who's 100% wrong and one person who's right. In a toxic relationship, especially with a narcissist, he will never admit to being wrong about anything. It will always be your fault. So if you find that you're always the one apologizing, you're always the one making excuses, that's also a big sign. And another thing I want to mention that's so, so important is everyone should make a list before they go out there in the dating world, should make a list of 3 must-have qualities they want in a partner and 3 absolute deal breakers. You need to tap into your objective perspective because the heart will lead us in all sorts of directions that are not good for us. So sometimes, you dating a guy, you're like, oh, I know he can't commit and he has all these problems. And he said that like he never wants to get married, but oh, my heart, I just want him. So I'm just going to date him anyway. That's obviously not going to end so well for you. So that's why you have to have your list, maybe talk it over with your coach or your therapist or your parents or your best friends, like somebody who can be objective and say, yes, these are the 3 things you need. These are the 3 deal breakers. It's interesting because actually I coach people and a lot of people want to get their ex-boyfriends back. And I'm like, okay, before we talk about that, make a list of your must-haves and your deal breakers for me. I'm like, I've never even thought of that before. And then they'll do it and they'll realize that the ex-boyfriend has all the deal breakers. So I'm like, what are we even doing here?
Right. Now, what would you say to the person who's just like super picky? Meaning, what if they have 10 deal breakers, not 3 deal breakers?
10 deal breakers is too many. Nobody needs to, like a guy with a receding hairline is not a deal breaker. So in terms of this, first, some things are deal breakers. Look, for me, height was a big thing. I'm a tall girl, I'm 5'8", and I feel like a big beast next to a short guy. So that was like a non-negotiable for me. Sometimes we could be a little realistic, but like you can't put things like money or job because that could change. That could change overnight. And then what? You're going to divorce him because he had a certain amount of money when you got married. Now he doesn't. In terms of pickiness, this is what I want to say. I'm not saying ever settle, but sometimes women use pickiness as armor. It's a way to reject before I'm rejecting. So they will pick men apart and pick them apart to pieces almost as a way of like, I don't really feel good enough deep down. So it's a way of sabotaging yourself. And that's why the most important thing is to work on your self-esteem so you don't do this. Because I see that happening all the time. Now, on the other side of it is be realistic. That's why sometimes it helps to work with a dating coach or to talk to your friends to get some like an objective perspective, because most of us don't know ourselves as well as we think. I didn't. I thought that I needed to marry some alpha CEO type. And I'm super alpha, and that's a disaster. You need a yin and a yang. You need a balance of masculine energy and feminine energy. That's what I thought I wanted, and that is not who I married at all. And now being married to someone who's like that, I realized what a disaster it would have been to marry the guy I thought I wanted. So you have to be realistic, and you also have to recognize, like, am I just terrified of being rejected? What's at the root of this?
Wow. Okay. You said so many juicy things and I'm just like, which direction do I want to take this in? Hold on. Okay. One thing that pops out was you mentioned you shouldn't settle. Right. And one thing that my husband and I actually like laugh about often is like how the language, when it comes to actually committing, the language that we use is settling down. And in a way, we are settling when we choose our partner, because by saying yes to one person, we're saying no to the rest of the world. And that's a form of settling down. And also by choosing that one person, I think what people need to realize is that that one person is not going to check every single box of our bucket list of what we want. So in a way, it is settling. And I find that when women are dating for years and years and years, this is just my philosophy, correct me if I'm wrong. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes they're just too picky and they have this language of never settling. So what can you say on that front?
Okay, so first is when I say never settle, I mean like if a guy you find him so repulsive and disgusting, like don't force yourself to give him a chance just because people are like, oh, like don't be too picky, and also like not compromising on your values and your boundaries. So, but yeah, I agree with what you said. We are settling in a certain way, but I look at it as yeah, you're settling in that. You're done with dating and all the endless possibilities and the land of potential, but you're entering into something that's so much higher and so much greater than that. Mm-hmm. So what's really important to look at is all a relationship really is do I want to do life with this person? And life is long and it's tedious and it's hard and it only gets harder. So I think a lot of people look at the butterflies and is he adventurous? Is he spontaneous? Is he gonna like whisk me away to Tulum for a weekend? But then it's like you're not looking at the bigger picture of like when you have kids, there's no such thing as that. There is no such thing as being spontaneous and adventurous. Right. And let's like that's gone. So I think that's what people need to look at. They're looking at the wrong thing. Like the butterfly stage of the relationship is so short-lived, and then after that, you just have being together and doing life together. And that's all. And so, yeah, you are settling in certain ways. There are definitely times where I feel like, I miss parts of my single life and the freedom and the just freedom to do whatever I wanted. And there are limitations that come with being married and with having children. But if that's what you choose and that's what you want, and you embrace that, like, okay, I'm trading in this life for this other life, which I think is so much better, even though it's much harder.
Right. But it's worth it. Anything that's hard, like raising kids, having kids, the hardest, most beautiful, most delicious thing we've ever done.
Right. I had kids when I was dating and gallivanting and all, I'm like, oh, I can't settle. I need a guy. It's like, look at this and this and this. She's like, do you want to have kids someday? I'm like, yeah, I do. She's like, then focus on a guy who's going to be a good father. And these like selfish jerks that you're dating are not that. And then I started looking at these guys through the lens of that. And I started noticing how selfish they were, how they would put themselves like before me. And is this person going to be? Not a good one. And if that's what I want, that's ultimately where, and I'm not saying that's what everybody wants. Everybody needs to identify what they want and put themselves on the path towards getting it. That's why, when I see some of my coaching clients, situationships, I'm like, well, what do you want? Like, I want a committed relationship. So then why are you doing this? Like, why are you on that path when you want to be on this path? You need to recognize what you want, of what it is you want. And you do that by not putting these stumbling blocks in your own way. A lot of the times we get in our own way, and that's what prevents us from getting the love that we want.
Totally. So where does passion and I want to say the word connection, because I think the assumption is there should be a connection at the very least, but what I'm hearing you say, and I agree with you, that I think people look for that intense passion, butterflies up front, and they don't realize like bigger picture. Like you said, when there's kids involved, you're not going on these spontaneous vacations to Tulum, right? So what should a person be looking for besides in the area of passion specifically? Because, okay, fine. Does he make a good father? Will he make a good husband? Is he responsible? Is he grounded? Okay, fine. But should there be a certain degree of passion? And if so, how much? How little?
Of course there needs to be passion. You need to be attracted to each other. You need to desire each other. You need to want to find ways to make the relationship spicy. And I think you need both. You need the fundamental compatibility and you need the chemistry. And I think that it's very easy to get swept up in the chemistry. The compatibility isn't as sexy. It's very easy to, we have such chemistry, so that must mean something. Well, while you're ignoring the compatibility. So I think that you have to, there's a balance of all of it. Chemistry, compatibility, do we have the same values? Do we want to move in the same direction in life? That's all. look for. But you can't eat much of one and not the other.
What I hear a lot from like clients, students, people who ask me questions, relationship is a huge topic. And clearly like every woman loves to talk about relationships. So one thing that comes up a lot in dating, I find, is like, there's that one voice in a lot of women's heads when dating. It's like that voice that's like, oh, but there's that one thing about him. There's that one thing about him that I just can't get that voice out of my head. I can't knock the feeling. It's judgment. I keep judging him when he's doing this thing or whatever that thing is. How would you speak to that voice of judgment in women's heads or men's heads when they're dating someone and everything else looks good, but that one thing is just, I can't get that voice out of my head?
It's a hard question to answer because I really need to know what the judgment thing is and how big of a deal it actually is and how much of it it's not. Like sometimes we do just need to trust our gut. Sometimes you do just have a bad feeling about someone, but that really is a case by case thing. But one thing I do want to mention is a lot of the times when we're really bothered by something about someone else, it's because that thing is something that bothers us about ourselves, you know, like other people being lazy, like repulses you. You find that disgusting. It's because, well, I'm disgusted with myself when I'm lazy. Oh, okay. So let's dig in a little deeper to what that's about. And usually we judge other people for the things that we judge ourselves about the most harshly. So that's why it's really a case by case thing, but it always starts with, where is this coming from? What is the root of this? Uncovering that and then untangling it and then seeing like, is this something that I want to continue? Because it really depends. Like when you say like there's one thing that bothers, is it because he chews with his mouth open or is it because like sometimes he speaks really rudely to the waiter? Like it's a whole...
Right. There's a spectrum. So let me give you a specific example then. Okay. I'll give you a specific example of a client who reached out to me last week. She's been dating someone for a number of months now. And her words verbatim was, everything else is so good about him. Like, I really like everything else and we're compatible in every other way, except when we're in social settings, he's like a little bit socially awkward. He's not so extrovert. He's not so talkative. And I always envision myself sitting at a table with someone who can hold space for everyone there and interact with everyone there. And I feel like I have to pick up those pieces and be that person to socialize because he's just a little bit socially awkward.
That's an interesting one. I've heard that one before. I mean, how long have they been dating?
I think she said like 6 months.
Oh, that's a while. So if that really is a big deal to her, then maybe this isn't the right person for her. Like she needs to ask herself, is this something I can compromise on? Is this really going to be a big deal? Possible that maybe over time he'll become more comfortable in social situations. But you always need to ask yourself, if nothing changed, if things stayed exactly as they were for the rest of our lives, would I be able to deal with it? Would I be okay with it? And if she's not, I mean, if that's something that is really, really important to her, then yeah, absolutely, that's valid.
Wow.
Because you don't, a relationship ever, especially for a man, men need to feel respected. And if she's going to feel like embarrassed or ashamed to be out in public with him, that's bad. Like that can really cause harm to the dynamic in the relationship. So that is something that is a big deal. I mean, some people might not care. Like people who are really introverted and don't even like going out and socializing that much, like then maybe that guy needs to be with somebody who's more like that.
I love that you said she has to ask herself if she can live with that versus, you know, I think the MO for many people is like, can I change that person? And like, I know for myself, I loved what a mentor told me years ago. I was dating this guy and I had that one voice in my head that I could not knock. And, you know, but everything else was great. And my mentor looked at me and he said, would you marry him the way he is today? And I just instantly, intuitively was like, no way. And he goes, well, there's your answer. You know, it was very straightforward, very black and white. Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I have a bunch of questions that people have asked. So let's like just jump into a few of them. Does it mean there's something wrong with me if I've tried everything but can't find the one?
No, it doesn't mean something's wrong with you. Because you don't need it to work with every single person that you date. In a relationship, either it's going to fail or it's going to last. Like those are the two options. And so if the relationships keep not working out, It just means that you haven't found the right one yet.
Mm-hmm.
I remember a friend of mine, because I was like, no, like I feel I had gone through like a drought where I wasn't even finding anyone to date. So it was just like a little drought. I'm like, I feel like I need dating, She's like, it's like running on the treadmill. Like you think you're being productive and getting somewhere, but like you're going nowhere. Like you're staying in the same spot. You're just spinning your wheels. Like dating and dating and dating doesn't necessarily bring you closer to finding the right one for you. Like all you need, like you could go through 2 years not dating anyone and then meet the right person for you.
Mm-hmm.
And another quick point to make, and this will probably come up a lot in the questions, is that you have to notice your thoughts and only engage with thoughts that serve you well. So notice a thought. And so the thought is there something wrong with me? And ask yourself, does thinking this thought serve me well? Does this take me where I want to go? And the answer is no. Like, what does that bring up in you? It brings up fear. It brings up insecurity. It brings up anxiety. So I'm not going to think this thought. I'm going to think the opposite. I will find the right person for me at the right time. And in the interim, always work on yourself and being the best version of yourself and finding that happiness and doing all those things that are so important. But there's no benefit of having that mentality of, well, something must be wrong with me. Still single.
Totally. Now, sometimes I hear people say, I think I'm just going to take a break from dating. I'm burnt out. Do you recommend that? You were the queen.
Oh, yes. I was, again, like it's a personality thing. I'm an introvert. So I
would not have guessed that.
I know nobody guesses that, but I'm hardcore introvert. My husband is hardcore extrovert. It's an interesting dynamic. But going on dates and having to do the chit chat and like the talking, it took so much out of me that it made me bitter and jaded. Now, someone who's an extrovert, I have no problem with that. They like talking to new people and doing the small talk and the first date banter. I needed to take frequent breaks when it was getting to a point where I was like, I hate this and I'm dreading it. So I mean, before I started dating my husband, I took off the whole summer from dating, and it helped me get to the best place mentally I've ever been in my life. I was fully like, no dating, summer of me, summer of Sabrina, and I just lift it up. I mean, I lived for me. I traveled. I focused on my career. I focused on exercising, and I was just at the top of my game. And then after that, my husband, for those who don't know, I married my high school ex-boyfriend. It was like 11 years of us bleeding in and out of each other's lives. He never had a desire to date me again. And then I don't think it's a coincidence that I do think he's the right person for me. It would happen eventually. But I think what sped it up was me going through this, taking this break, really giving my soul a makeover. And then I think I was really ready and in that place of like, and then once I was in the right place, he was in the right place, it all just moved so quickly.
I love that you gave yourself that time to give your soul a makeover. That language is awesome. Because I think a lot of people get stuck in this thought process of, if I take a break, I might miss the opportunity while I'm on break of meeting my soulmate.
I mean, look, I think that if he is your soulmate, you'll find each other once again, and he could still enter your life while you're in this break mode. But if you feel like now I need to take a break, then that's what you need in your life right now. And trust that, like, don't have this FOMO mentality of what am I missing out on? That totally defeats the purpose of the break.
Right. And I always I look back at my own dating experience, and actually when I got married, thank God I did not get married a minute earlier. I got married later on. I wasn't 20 years old. And had I not taken that time to work on myself during those years, I probably, who knows, but could have manifested a person who would have been toxic or not pleasant.
100%.
Yeah. So I think in hindsight, it's easy to look back and be like, I have no regrets because I married my soulmate. But when you're in it, it's painful, because I get a lot of women who they're just like, how do I know if I'm just not meant to be single for the rest of my life? Like, do you ever get that? Do you get people asking you, how do I know if I'm not meant to be single for the rest of my life? And what would you tell them? How would you console?
To that. And again, I ask them, what do you want? What do you want in terms of your relationship? I want to be a committed relationship. I want to get married. So why are you thinking these thoughts? Like, why are you going down this path of, what if I'm just meant to be single? If you want to be married, give yourself permission to want it. And what does that do for you to tap into that energy? Mm-hmm. I also really I don't know if you know Byron Katie. Yeah. I'm sure you heard of her, right? I love her questions of so you think to yourself, single forever? Is it true? Yeah, it feels like it's true. Can you 100% know that it's true? No, you can't. How does it make you feel? It makes me feel terrible. It makes me feel scared. It makes me feel fearful. It makes me feel anxious. Okay, so who would you be without the thought? I'd be a lot more confident. I would be more calm. I would be less anxious. So tell yourself the opposite. Thoughts, I mean, you're a manifestation coach. You know this. Thoughts are so powerful. Thoughts are real forces. Thoughts change the energy. They change our vibration. They change the way we interact with the world. They change our lives, basically. And it's so simple, but most people don't realize this. Most people don't realize that all the power is in your mind and what thoughts you engage with. Mm-hmm. When you engage with thoughts of, what if I'm meant to be single forever? That puts you in a fearful scarcity mindset. Mm-hmm. That does not do positive for you. So you have to, even if you feel ridiculous, say to yourself, I am going to be the right one for me. Say it anyway. Mm-hmm. And redirect your mind times as you need to.
Totally, 100%. Fake it till you make it. All right, let's jump into some more questions. Someone asks, what makes you a good dater? Like, what makes a person a good dater? It's a big question.
Makes a person a good dater. I think that the best attitude to have on a date is, do I want to go on another date with this person? That's it. Not sizing them up. Do they meet all my mental, all of my checklist items? Do they check everything off the list? Because when you do that, think about how the other person feels. It's like going in for a job interview. When the other person's sizing you up, it doesn't feel good. You feel on edge the entire time. And then when the interview's over, you're like, oh, I can breathe. It doesn't feel good to be sized up. So what makes someone a good dater is if they can just be present. Just be there. Connect with the other, learn what they're about. That's it. No jumping 20 steps up, no picking them apart, just be. Like, the greatest gift you can give another person is your presence, is being there. So you can't connect, not there.
I love that. And if I can just hop on the shoulders of your answer, which was wonderful, from a manifestation perspective, I teach that where your thoughts go, energy flows. Where your thoughts go, energy flows. So if you're what my perspective when I started seriously dating for marriage was, I led with the thought or the question, how could I make it work with this guy? And I asked myself that on every date, because I think due to our patterns and conditioning and societal conditioning, the mind tends to err towards judgment, negativity, fear. And from that place, we're instantly going to look at the person who's sitting across from us and come from a judgmental place and think about why it might not work. But if we can reframe and ask ourselves, how could I make it work with this person? Then at least, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But at least you took your thoughts in that direction in order to manifest a positive outcome. So I think that also helps to make someone a good dater.
Yeah.
Now, okay. I think there's a lot of games in dating. And I think that's a woman's, maybe a men's also, but I can just speak for myself when I was in that world of dating, just games, how to get over games. How do you know if the guy is playing games? How do you know if he's actually serious about you? Let's start there. How do you know if he's playing games? How do you know if he's serious about you?
The first is, no one really intentionally seeks out to play games. Most guys, at least, aren't doing that. I do think it's important to look at the intention. And really, there's only two things that you need to look at when you are dating someone to know if he really likes you. So we'll say playing games is okay, he's not serious, but he's still there. Because I see that all the time. The guy, girl's really confused. Why is he still calling me, texting me, but then saying he doesn't want to be my boyfriend? The two things you need to look for is he consistent? Do you consistently hear from him? Is he consistently booking the next date with you? And next is, does the relationship escalate? Okay, so you go from, all right, we met, we're talking, we're texting a little. Now he asks me out. Now we're going on dates 3 times a week. Now we're going on dates more times a week. Now we're talking on the phone. Now we're meeting each other's family. It doesn't mean that you're hitting a new milestone every week. The milestones can be slow, but you are moving in a certain direction. Now, if a guy's playing games, he's not going to be. That's when you're in a situation where he's calling you all the constantly every day, and then you don't hear from him for a week, and then he's back, and then you're like, he must have feelings for me, so I'm not even hearing from him. Why does he keep popping back up in my life? But then he's gone, and the relationship doesn't progress. You stay stuck in your situationship. It's so funny. These didn't exist when I was single and dating. Probably not when you were. Now it used to be dating, being an official couple, but now you have dating, the talking phase. That's like a whole phase onto itself. Then you have the situationship, and then you have the dating. Dating is like got higher up there, and then you have official relationship. So if you're just stuck in the top during the situationship phase, then yeah, he's messing around. Not that, but I don't like to say that because I don't like to pit men against women, and I think it's very it's very damaging for women to have the perspective that all men are jerks and they're just gonna play with our heads and play with our emotions. So that's not true of most men. You know, it's the same as like a guy thinking, oh, all women are crazy, all women are just going to mess with your head. You don't want to date a guy like that. Now, why would a guy want to date a girl who's like, oh, all men are jerks, they're just going to break your heart? I don't think it's playing games. It's that, look, like when we're selfish creatures by nature, it takes somebody very evolved to get past the selfishness. And so when someone's just focusing on their needs, they're not always able to step out of that and think of like, okay, how might she be interpreting what's going on in this dynamic, you know? Especially if a girl is in a situation and he's like, look, I don't want to be official. I don't like labels, whatever it is. And she's like, okay, that's fine. But secretly, she's not fine with it. And then she feels like, oh, he's messing with my head because he acts like my boyfriend, but he's not. But it's like, no, you agreed to the terms of the relationship. So we also need to take responsibility for what we're accepting because we set the standard for how we get treated in this world. It's like, no one's going to see an item on sale and then insist on paying full price for it at the store. Like not one person in the world would ever do that. Mm-hmm. So it's the same with us. Like, set the standard for how we're treated.
Totally.
It's like a very long answer.
Totally. No, but it's a necessary answer. You know, it reminds me of a couple that I was working with a couple years ago. So they were together for 3 years. And at the 3-year mark, she had requested that they move in together. They were very clearly boyfriend and girlfriend. Like that was clear for both of them. And she had put on the table a request to move in together. And he freaked out. To him, that was like the next step of commitment. And that's when only after 3 years did he begin to realize, oh, I'm not ready for this big step. And I actually don't want to get married anytime soon. Like I'm still living my life. I still want to make money. I still want to do this. I want to do that. And she was heartbroken, but she never brought up to him earlier, where are we holding? What is this? What do you want? What do you want for your future? When do you want to get married? And those are uncomfortable questions, I think, for anyone to have to bring up on their own. So how do you navigate those uncomfortable questions in order to get the clarity of where the two of you are actually holding and what your vision for the future is?
You're bringing up a really, really important point, which is that people who are good at relationships date other people who want the same kind of relationship they want. So if you want success in your love life, you need to date someone who wants the same relationship that you want. In terms of bringing it up, I mean, going 3 years and not knowing where he stands, it's like way too long. Obviously not, you don't want to scare someone away on the first date. Once you see that like, oh, this is going, like this is moving and he's being consistent and things are escalating, then it's important to ask, like, you don't ever want to back a man into a corner, but it's important to say like, is it in your plan within the next few years to settle down, get married, and have a family? Like, these things aren't happening today. It's not happening now. Is that the destination? Is that where you want to go? And that's a very non-threatening, non-scary way to see where his head is at. What page is he on? Is this what he wants? Like, if he clamps up, a few years, that's too much. Like, I need to at least be single for 10 more years. Then it's like, okay, obviously this is not a match because I'm not waiting 10 years to get married and start a family.
And that's not rejection. I think a woman needs to know, or a person needs to, it's not rejection, it's protection. If he's saying no, then thank you for that clarity up front. You just saved me a lot of years. Mm-hmm.
Right. And you never get that time back. So don't be afraid it's only to your own detriment doing that, like avoiding having these conversations because you're afraid. Okay, so what would you rather do? Wait a few years and then years down the line discover that he's not on the same page as you? Like, which is the worst option? Like, feeling a little uncomfortable or wasting years of your life?
Right. Totally. Okay. What do you think is the main reason, if there is a main reason, why some women remain single for a long time?
Oh, that's a tough one.
You know, I come from like so many of my girlfriends, yes, thank God so many of them get married, but a lot of them, I'm talking like mid 30s, late 30s, they're still even 40s, and they're still searching for their soulmate, and they are consistently dating. And when you look at these women, they're amazing, incredible women. Like you wouldn't look at them and think something's off. So my husband and I talk about this a lot. Like, what is it? What's not hitting the mark for them?
I mean, it's hard to give a general answer to that because everyone's situations are different. I'll tell you from what I see, it's not dealing with unresolved trauma, being too picky, feeling extremely insecure. It's very hard. Like, you have to realize, like attracts like. An emotionally unavailable person is going to attract another emotionally unavailable person. An emotionally healthy person will attract an emotionally healthy person. Now, one of my think, well, I'm not emotionally unavailable and I'm desperate for a relationship. She might be going after guys who are emotionally unavailable because deep down she doesn't really feel like she's worthy of love. So she's going after people who can't ever give her exactly what she wants. So even though she desperately wants it, she's not addressing the root issue. Sometimes it's just not your time. It's just not your time yet. I mean, I dated my husband when I was 17. Imagine, like, we got married at 21. I wouldn't have a career because I needed to spend 12 years dating every man in Manhattan so that I can have an arsenal of stories and experiences. Like, it's amazing to me that every one of my coaching clients will tell me about their relationship. And I'm like, oh yeah, I had a relationship just like that. Like, I'm able to relate because I've lived through every type of relationship you can have. So maybe that's my dream. I mean, I got married at 30. Things turned around for me very quickly. Got engaged, married, and pregnant all when I was 30. Like, I was single as can be when I was 29, taking a date sabbatical. And, and then things pretty quickly. Some people just, I know people who got married later in life and like, you know what? This was my time. I found my person and they're happy. And that's just how it unfolded for them. And yeah, there were many years of being lonely and for things being painful, but it's just, sometimes you just kind of have to relinquish control. Unfortunately, it's hard. Yeah. Especially like alpha, type A, type women, like who are so used to being in control, and that has led to success in their careers and other areas of their lives. But in relationships, they're like, no, this needs to happen now, and I want to try to control this. And there are just things that are just not in your control. It could be that your soulmate is there, but he hasn't worked on himself yet. It could be that he's married right now, and then I know plenty of couples like this who the woman was single for years and years and years. The man was married to someone else, eventually got divorced, and then they got married. And so, who knows? Like, it's this intricate web and puzzle how all of us fit into each other's lives. Yeah. But again, I would just say, let it serve you to be sad about it. Like, be excited about the day when you will have it. Like, isn't that a key part of manifestation?
Yeah, I was just going to say that.
Have the thing that I want.
Totally.
I do that all the time.
Yeah. Your vibrational frequency starts with your thoughts. What are we thinking? Our thinking turns into our emotional state. Our emotional state creates an energetic field around us. Like, if you put us behind a special type of camera, you'll see that there's an actual energetic frequency, like a bubble around us of energy that we are exuding out into the world. And it goes without saying, like, if we're thinking negative thoughts, right, then what's going to manifest is negative outcomes. Like you said earlier, like a mentality of lack manifests lack. But if we think abundantly, and I always say, be excited about the possibility of, even if it's not yours, and visualize it as though it's already yours. Because in the quantum field, when you do that, you create it and then you draw it closer to you. So yes, total manifestation talk. Love it. Can we also talk a second about just like the types of guys? Because one thing I hear, and I think I was guilty of this when I was dating also, it's like, I wanted someone super like deep and into Kabbalah and spiritual and could have long conversations with me for hours. I didn't have kids at the time, obviously, but I also wanted someone who was grounded and able to make a really good income and had a really good career and was just very 2 feet on the ground. So like, I wanted someone whose head was in the clouds, but feet on the ground. And I realized like I was dating guys who were either one or the other. So I think it comes down to also like expectation. What should we be expecting of our partner? Because I see this a lot in women, like they want the full package, and there's nothing wrong with wanting the full package. But what should our expectations be when it comes to like the types of guy we want to end up with?
So I just don't ever think that's a good idea. All right, let me just prop it up like this. To be in this place of like, he needs this, and we have these conversations, because again, that puts you in the analysis mode. And when you're dating somebody and you're sizing them up like that, it doesn't feel good. And here's something to understand about men. All men want is a woman who's easy to be around. Now, that doesn't mean that she never has a complaint or that she's never unhappy with him. It just means that she can express it in a way that doesn't make him feel bad about himself, doesn't make him feel like a loser. A man's greatest driving force is to feel like a winner, to feel like the man. So when you're sizing him up like that, it doesn't feel good. It feels like, oh, this is bad energy and I want to get away from this. Instead, I think that you have to go back to your list of the 3 and the 3. There's 3 must-haves and the 3 deal breakers. Instead of like, can we do this? We have these kinds of conversations. Because the fact is, you don't need one person to fulfill every single one of your needs. Like, my husband doesn't care about pop culture and he doesn't care about true crime. And I happen to love these things. So I don't need to talk about this with him. Like, I can talk about these things with other people, and I can talk about my conspiracy theories and that interesting, like, and those things that interest me. And there's so many people out there. Like, even I just have my friends, my friends from Instagram or TikTok who I can talk about this stuff with, or my friends. You don't need to get all your needs met. Like, that, I don't understand like where this came from. This idea that like our spouse has to meet every single one of our needs. Like, you can also have friends. You also have family. You also have like other people like that you can connect with on these levels. Like, you could, and maybe you didn't, if you did marry a guy who's so into Kabbalah and philosophy and stuff, then go find somebody to learn with who is super into that, and that will fulfill that need. And your husband can fulfill the other needs.
Right. I love that you said that. I was just talking to a girlfriend of mine yesterday about that exact same thing. Like, it took me a year of marriage, or maybe like 9 months of being married to my husband, to realize that I needed to create a sisterhood of girlfriends to fill those parts, to fulfill those needs that I had in myself. That, thank God, my husband's amazing and he fulfills a lot of my needs. But we can't expect our partner to be both like our therapist, our best friend, the person who goes get our nails done together, a parent, a healer. It's just the money made. It's, let him know his role and be clear about his role, and then have a sisterhood or a therapist or whatever it is to fill the other roles. I love that. Okay. All right. Let's take like a couple more questions. Can a guy who fears commitment actually commit? Sometimes I hear men say it's just about finding the right one. It's not really about a fear of commitment. It's about finding the right one. So if you're in a relationship with a guy or a girl who fears commitment, what do you do?
Okay. So I think that both things are true. Like, 2 things can be true at the same time. I have definitely seen situations where a guy's like, oh, I can't commit, meets another girl, and he's like, oh, this is the girl for me, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And it's not that he was lying when he couldn't commit. It just was that he felt that this wasn't right, it felt off, and maybe he interpreted that as, oh, I'm just not ready to commit now, until he met somebody who was more aligned with him, and it worked out. So I think that if a guy says to you, first of all, if he says, I don't want to be in a relationship with you, I don't like labels, I don't want to be exclusive, and if that's what you want, then you have to end the situation. The worst thing you can do is stick around, try to get him to change his mind. Because the fact is, if you're just there, then you're there. Like, he's not going to change the situation. There's nothing motivating him to change anything about it. If he really, really likes you and senses that, oh, I could actually lose her, then he'll snap into shape real quick, assuming he really, really likes you. And then, look, I've seen so many guys with commitment issues get over it. It doesn't mean that they wake up one day and they're over it. These guys had to really recognize, and it's like, you have to clean up your side of the street. Us, as we do, I've spoken about the things that we need to do to work on ourselves, and they also need to do it too. Like, this isn't just the women doing all the work. He needs to recognize I have commitment issues and how I'm going to deal with it. Like, do I need to see a therapist? Do I need to see like a healer? Like, what is it that I need to address it? And that's his responsibility. You can't fix him. You can't date potential. You want a partner, not a project. And this was my problem, because I love fixing people. That's what I do for a living. I'm a fixer, Like, and it always backfired. It always resulted in me getting the guy ready to be in the next relationship after me.
Story of my life. I can hard relate. Mm-hmm.
So that's not your job. If he tells you he has commitment issues, you have to take that at face value and just move on.
Mm-hmm. I think it was Oprah who once said, when someone tells you something about themselves, believe them. Because I think we do this all the time. Like someone will tell us something, but we believe what we want to believe about that person. So we end up creating a whole like illusion around that person. Meanwhile, they told us all along who they are. Believe them. Okay. Now you talk a lot on Instagram about, this no contact period. When I hear that, for me, like instantly, I'm assuming that means like there's a breakup that happens and there's a time period where you're not supposed to contact the person who broke up with you, right? I mean, should a person just try to move on or should they get it like wrapped up in, for me, I think games, like it feels like a game, like, oh, I can't contact them. I have to wait. Now I'm like sitting by my phone. Are they texting me? Are they responding? Right. And it feels like it's like I'm playing games when my intuition says, no, just move on. Like just move on. And if it's meant to be, it will be. So in regards to this no contact period, how do you get past it without it turning into this like game?
I totally hear that. So the no contact period is the advice I give whether a woman wants to just get over her ex or she wants to get him back. Because a lot of the women that come to me just want their ex back. And the advice, they do not want to hear just move on, even though essentially that is the advice. The way to get him back is to first move on. The reason I set like a no contact period is because I have to be realistic here in what people are going to do. Now, I would rather a woman waits a certain amount of time before reaching out to him, as opposed to what a lot of my coaching clients do, which is constantly texting him or showing up places or trying to win him back over, because that's what they do. And normally, like when they come to me, like they've been doing this for a while. So instead, I say, okay, let's give it some time, because I think that it's more palatable, digestible for them to think that, okay, I have to get through this period of time, and I give instructions on what to do during no contact. It's not just stare at the calendar or wait for the minutes to tick by until you can reach out to him again. I give, especially in my X-Back resource guide, in my links or all of my profile, I give exactly the steps to follow during the no contact period to optimize it. It's really a period of rebuilding yourself. So I give it a time period, and I tell them, a lot of the times by the time you get to the end of it, you might not even want to reach out to him. Or part of you might realize, no, this is the man for me. And now I fixed what I need to fix on my end. Like I recognize now during these 2 months of no contact that I was very needy. I was taking all my insecurities out on him. I was expecting too much. Sometimes they should not be getting back together with the guy at all. I mean, when I deal with one-on-one coaching, I had a girl the other day who I was coaching, and in the middle of the session, I'm like giving her all the advice, like, this is how to get it back. In the middle, she just casually mentions that like he physically assaults her. And I'm like, whoa. Like, okay, like we're canceling everything I said. We're not getting back together with this person.
Yeah.
So in my coaching sessions now about X-Back, first, the most important step is he worthy of getting back together with? Like first we look at, what are your must-haves? What are your deal breakers? Does he fulfill these? Was it toxic? Is this salvageable? Then you need to go through no contact because you have to emotionally detoxify. Do you know that, I don't have a study offhand, but like the brains of people after a breakup are similar to the brains of heroin addicts, like the withdrawal that you are experiencing?
Wow.
And now,
makes sense.
Yes, a heartbreak, it is like withdrawal. So you need, and there was also this study that every time you reach out to your ex immediately following a breakup, you basically set yourself back to the beginning. So any progress that you made in moving on, it puts you back to square one. So at least by saying no contact for at least 30 days, but it's case by case, like sometimes people need to go longer. I usually recommend waiting until you're at a place where if he doesn't want to get back together with you, you would be okay. I'm okay we get back together. I'm okay if he doesn't want that. If you're in a place where I need to get back together with him or my world will implode, you're not ready. So at least you're getting your head together, you're getting to a solid place, and then you can decide. And at least it feels more realistic. Because after a breakup, hardest thing is to think, so I'm never going to talk to him ever again. Like that's just so unfathomable. So the point of the period is like, of the no contact period, is just getting your head together, being able to see objectively again.
Yeah, so necessary. And what about breaks? I often hear people say, oh, we need to take a break to process things. But when I actually dive into the inner world of these people who are processing things, they're not doing any processing. Like they're just living their life and letting time pass until they get swept away by the next person or whatever it might be. So it's like, what are your thoughts on breaks?
I guess it really depends on what the reason is for the break. I mean, you have to look at what are the issues that we're having and are they solvable? And is a break sometimes a break is a good thing because it gives you some perspective. It's very hard to think clearly when you're in an emotionally tumultuous situation. And when a relationship is not going well, that's what it's like. Emotions are heated and you can't see clearly. So sometimes, in some cases, a break is necessary. Other times you're just kind of delaying the inevitable, like the relationship is on its way out and you're just kind of like, all right, maybe a break will fix things. So that again is one of those things where I kind of have to look at it case by case and see.
Right. No, that's a good point. Okay. And the last thing I want to bring up is the topic of twin flames. Do you talk at all about twin flames? Do you believe in twin flames? Is that a thing?
Okay. Was anybody talking about twin flames before Megan Fox came along and said that machine gun? Yeah, that was the first time I ever heard of this concept. I do believe in it. I do believe that there are people out there that are meant for us. I do believe we've lived past lives and we may have encountered people in past lives. I do believe all that stuff. But you can't know what is what, And honestly, maybe you can know. Like, I believe that I married my soulmate and he believes that too. And when you are both in agreement about that, okay, great. But if you decide that somebody is your twin flame or your soulmate, and he's not in agreement, is like, no, I don't want to be in a relationship right now, then he's not your soulmate. Or maybe he is your soulmate, but now's not the right time. And the fact is, we don't live in the future. We live in the present. So you need to look at your circumstances right now. If right now he doesn't want to be with you, then it doesn't matter if he's your twin flame or whatever he is. Like, if he can't give you what you want, what does it matter what he is? Like, what we call him,
Totally.
So I think that, I hear my readers say that all the time. Like, I can't move on because he's my twin flame. And it's like, by giving him that label, you're keeping yourself stuck. Because one day you might realize how wrong you were. Because I've definitely thought guys were my soulmate. And I'm like, what was I thinking? What's the matter with me? Like, I can't believe I thought that.
Mm-hmm.
One day you might, and right now you're holding yourself hostage. You're holding yourself hostage in this situation. He doesn't want to be with you. You've decided that he's your twin flame or whatever he is. You can't move on. So you have to change the language. You have to change it to, I feel very drawn to this person. I felt connected to this person. And then you have to add, but obviously this is not my person right now. And the right person at the wrong time is the wrong person. It's not my person right now. So I'm going to move on. Like, don't keep yourself stuck.
Well said. Okay. Sabrina, it was so good. Love it. And I'm just so excited that we reconnected. And thank you. You are a well of wisdom on this subject. Like, you brought me back to my teenage years, my early 20s. I forgot what dating was like. And I hear you talk and I'm like, oh my gosh, yes, that was me.
Yeah, I have to relive with what I do. I'm constantly reliving my bad dating experience.
Yeah, but it's so clear that you're in that conversation all the time because you know the ins and outs of just the dating world. And that's awesome. So, all right, everyone, if you're not already following Sabrina, follow Sabrina. And I'm excited to connect off Instagram.
Okay, sounds good.
Amazing.
Bye.
Thanks so much. Bye.
If you enjoyed this episode and would like more manifestation inspiration, tune in every Monday for a new episode. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out on an episode. What you get out of this show means the world to me, so I invite you to leave an honest review. If you want more, you can follow me on social media at Ayelet Polonsky. I also have a number of virtual courses to offer if you're ready to take this material to the next level and start embodying a manifestation mindset. I teach you how to heal past trauma, experience the most joy out of life, and rewrite your future so you can feel good more often. Simply head on over to ayeletpolonsky.com for a variety of resources you can start taking advantage of immediately. See you next week. And as always, think big and happy manifesting.